Let's get real, folks. We've all been there. That gnawing feeling that something's not quite right in a friendship or acquaintance. You're laughing at the same jokes, attending the same events, maybe even sharing confidences, but deep down, a little voice whispers, they don't really like you. It's a chilling thought, and one that most people actively try to suppress. After all, nobody wants to believe they're disliked. We're social creatures, hardwired for connection and belonging. Rejection, even the subtle kind, stings. But what if that little voice is right? What if someone is masking their true feelings behind a facade of politeness, forced smiles, and hollow compliments? This isn't about paranoia or projecting insecurities. It's about developing a keen awareness of social dynamics and learning to read the unspoken cues that reveal a person's true feelings. In a world obsessed with superficial connections and carefully curated online personas, it's more important than ever to be able to discern genuine affection from a carefully constructed performance. Because let's be honest, most people are too afraid of confrontation to be brutally honest. They'd rather let resentment simmer beneath the surface, masking it with a thin veneer of civility. Think about it. How often do you see genuine, unfiltered honesty in your daily interactions? We're bombarded with carefully crafted narratives, from politicians spinning their agendas to influencers promoting a lifestyle of unattainable perfection. In this environment of manufactured authenticity, it's easy to get caught up in the illusion and miss the subtle signs that someone is harboring negative feelings towards you. And that's where the danger lies. Ignoring these signs can lead to a host of problems. You might find yourself investing time and energy in relationships that are fundamentally one-sided, constantly seeking validation from someone who is incapable of providing it. You might be taken advantage of, manipulated, or simply left feeling drained and depleted after every interaction. The worst part? You might not even realize it's happening until you're already emotionally invested. I know this from personal experience. I spent years clinging to friendships that were based on nothing more than shared history and a desire to avoid conflict. I overlooked the subtle digs, the passive-aggressive comments, the consistent lack of support, all because I didn't want to rock the boat. I convinced myself that I was being too sensitive, too demanding, too much. It wasn't until I started paying attention to the unspoken cues, the subtle shifts in body language and tone, that I realized the truth: these people didn't genuinely like me. And more importantly, they didn't respect me. This realization was painful, but it was also incredibly liberating. It allowed me to reclaim my power, to set boundaries, and to invest my time and energy in relationships that were truly nourishing and supportive. And that's what I want for you. I want you to be able to recognize the signs that someone dislikes you, even when they're trying to hide it. I want you to be empowered to make informed decisions about your relationships, to prioritize your own well-being, and to surround yourself with people who genuinely value and appreciate you. Now, before we dive into the specifics, let's address a common misconception: this isn't about becoming hypervigilant or assuming the worst in everyone. It's not about turning into a social detective, constantly analyzing every interaction for hidden motives. It's about cultivating a healthy sense of self-awareness and learning to trust your intuition. If something feels off, it probably is. It's also important to remember that everyone has their own unique communication style. Some people are naturally more reserved or introverted, while others are more outgoing and expressive. It's crucial to consider these individual differences when interpreting someone's behavior. A person's lack of enthusiasm might be a sign of dislike, or it might simply be a reflection of their personality. Context is key. A single instance of a particular behavior doesn't necessarily indicate a deep-seated dislike. It's the pattern of behavior over time that reveals the truth. Are they consistently exhibiting several of these signs? Are their actions contradicting their words? These are the questions you need to ask yourself. Finally, remember that you can't control how other people feel about you. You can be kind, considerate, and respectful, but ultimately, someone's feelings are their own responsibility. What you can control is how you respond to their behavior. You can choose to ignore the signs and continue investing in a one-sided relationship, or you can choose to acknowledge the truth and take steps to protect your own well-being. So, with all that in mind, let's cut through the BS and talk about the 7 sneaky signs that someone dislikes you but is hiding it. Prepare yourself, because some of this might be uncomfortable to hear. But remember, facing the truth is always better than living in denial. And the truth is, you deserve to be surrounded by people who genuinely like and respect you. Don't settle for anything less. Sign number 1, they're always joking about your flaws. We all know that one person. The one who considers themselves a master of wit, but their humor always seems to come at your expense. They'll zero in on your quirks, your mistakes, your perceived imperfections, and they'll deliver their barbs with a smile and a disarming, "I'm just messing with you." It seems harmless on the surface, maybe even playful. But let's not kid ourselves. These jokes are often more than just innocent banter. They're calculated digs, cleverly disguised as humor, designed to chip away at your self-esteem, bit by bit. Think about the mechanics of a joke. It often relies on a sense of superiority, a feeling that the person telling the joke is somehow smarter, funnier, or more insightful than the subject of the joke. When the joke is consistently directed at your flaws, it's a subtle way of reinforcing this power dynamic. It's a way for the joker to feel better about themselves by putting you down. It's also a test. They're testing the waters to see how much disrespect you'll tolerate. How much will you laugh along? How much will you internalize their criticisms? How much will you allow them to define your self-worth? And the more you laugh along, the more you give them permission to continue. You're essentially sending the message that you're okay with being the butt of their jokes, that you don't value yourself enough to stand up for yourself. I remember a time when I was close to someone who seemed to have a running commentary on my life. It wasn't outright malicious, but it was a constant stream of little jabs. My fashion choices were always interesting, my opinions were quirky, and my ambitions were cute. At first, I brushed it off. I told myself they were just trying to be funny, that I was being too sensitive. But as time went on, I started to notice a pattern. The jokes were always aimed at my perceived weaknesses, never at my strengths. They never celebrated my accomplishments or acknowledged my talents. It was always about pointing out my flaws, real or imagined. It wasn't long before I started second-guessing myself. I started to question my judgment, my abilities, even my sense of style. I wondered if maybe they were right, if maybe I was flawed in some fundamental way. This is the insidious power of constant criticism, even when it's disguised as humor. It can erode your self-confidence and make you doubt your own worth. Here's where it gets controversial. We've been conditioned to believe that if we can't take a joke, we're the ones with the problem. We're labeled as sensitive, humorless, or too serious. But let's flip that script. There's nothing wrong with standing up for yourself when a joke crosses the line. In fact, it's essential. You deserve to be around people who lift you up, not those who knock you down just to get a cheap laugh. True friends don't need to point out your flaws to feel better about themselves. They celebrate your strengths and help you work through your weaknesses without making you the punchline. They understand that humor should be inclusive, not exclusive. They know the difference between playful teasing and malicious mockery. I've seen it happen time and again. People who let these kinds of jokes slide, thinking it's easier to keep the peace than to make waves. They rationalize the behavior, telling themselves that the person doesn't mean any harm, that they're just being themselves. But here's the deep truth: allowing others to disrespect you, even in jest, is a slippery slope. It starts with small comments, but over time, those jokes can wear you down, making you question your worth. And the more you allow it, the more they'll push, until you're left doubting yourself, all because you didn't want to seem too sensitive. I had to learn this the hard way. I realized that by laughing along, I was giving them permission to keep going. I was complicit in my own disrespect. It wasn't until I started pushing back, setting boundaries, that I noticed a shift, not just in how they treated me, but in how I saw myself. I stopped letting their words define me and started owning my narrative. So, here's my advice: the next time someone makes a joke at your expense, don't just laugh it off. Ask yourself, is this really funny, or is there something more going on here? Is this a pattern of behavior? Is this person consistently targeting my flaws? And if the answer is the latter, don't be afraid to call them out. It might be uncomfortable. It might even end the friendship. But your self-respect is worth far more than someone's misguided sense of humor. You can say something like, "I don't really find that funny," or "I'm not comfortable with you making jokes about that." You can also set a boundary by saying, "Please don't make comments about my specific flaw anymore." The key is to be assertive but not aggressive. You're not trying to start a fight, you're simply setting a clear boundary. And if the person responds defensively or refuses to respect your boundaries, that's a clear sign that they're not worth your time and energy. Ultimately, life's too short to surround yourself with people who can't see your value. If their idea of friendship is constantly pointing out your flaws, then it's time to find new friends. The ones who truly care about you will never need to put you down to feel good about themselves. They'll celebrate your strengths, support your growth, and make you feel good about being you, flaws and all. So stand tall, speak up, and don't let anyone reduce you to a punchline. You deserve better than that. Sign number 2, they give compliments that sting like insults. Ah, the backhanded compliment. The wolf in sheep's clothing of social interactions. We've all been there. Someone gives you a compliment, but instead of feeling good, you're left with a bitter aftertaste, like you've just been slapped with a velvet glove. It's the kind of compliment that makes you pause and think, wait, was that a compliment or an insult? And here's the harsh reality: often, it's a bit of both. These backhanded compliments are a subtle, almost sneaky way for people to undermine you while pretending to be kind. They're designed to make you feel insecure, inadequate, or even slightly confused. They're a power play, a way for the person giving the compliment to assert their superiority while making you doubt your own abilities. Think about the structure of a backhanded compliment. It typically starts with something positive, a seemingly genuine acknowledgement of your talent or accomplishment. But then comes the "but," the "however," or the qualifier that negates the initial praise. "That's a really nice dress for you. You did a great job on this presentation, considering you're new to the company. Wow, you're actually pretty good at this, for someone who's always been so clumsy." Those extra words, those subtle qualifiers, are the poison. They're the way the person giving the compliment undermines your confidence and reminds you of your perceived shortcomings. They're saying, "I see you trying, but you'll never be as good as me." It's toxic, but it's wrapped up in such a pretty package that you almost miss the poison inside. I remember a time when I was working on a big project that I was incredibly proud of. I poured my heart and soul into it, working late nights and weekends to make sure it was perfect. After putting in countless hours of hard work, I finally shared it with a group of colleagues. One of them, someone I thought was a supporter, said with a smile, "Wow, this is actually pretty good for someone like you." I stood there stunned. On the surface, it seemed like a compliment. They acknowledged the quality of my work. But those last few words, "for someone like you," hit me like a ton of bricks. What did that even mean? Was I not supposed to be capable of doing good work? Did they have such a low opinion of me that they were surprised by my success? The more I thought about it, the more it stung. I realized that their compliment wasn't about celebrating my achievement, it was about reminding me of my perceived limitations. It was a way for them to feel superior, to maintain their position in the hierarchy. Here's the controversy. These so-called compliments are laced with a hidden agenda. They're not meant to uplift you, they're designed to keep you in your place. They're a way for the person giving the compliment to assert their superiority while making you doubt your own abilities. They're saying, "I see you trying, but you'll never be as good as me." Let's be real. People who give backhanded compliments are often insecure themselves. They see your potential, your strengths, and it scares them. So, they use these sly little digs to keep you second-guessing yourself, to make sure you don't rise too high. It's like they're patting you on the back while holding you down with the other hand. They're afraid that your success will somehow diminish their own, that you'll outshine them or expose their own insecurities. So, they try to sabotage you with these subtle put-downs, hoping to keep you from reaching your full potential. And here's where it gets even more controversial: we've all done it at some point. Maybe not intentionally, but we've all let our insecurities slip out in the form of a compliment that's meant to remind someone else of their place. Maybe you've told a friend that they look great, considering how little sleep they've been getting. Maybe you've praised a colleague for their presentation skills, even though they're usually so nervous. We do this because we're all human. We all have moments of insecurity and envy. But the key is to be aware of this tendency and to actively work against it. To try to give genuine compliments that are free of hidden agendas and subtle put-downs. But here's the deeper message: you don't have to accept this disguised hostility. You have the power to reject it, to see it for what it really is, a reflection of their own insecurities, not a measure of your worth. When someone says, "You're smarter than you look," or "This is good, considering you're new at this," you don't have to swallow it whole. You can call it out for what it is, even if it makes things awkward. You can say something like, "What do you mean by that?" or "I'm not sure I understand the qualifier in that compliment." You can also simply say, "Thank you," and refuse to engage with the negative undertones. The key is to not internalize their negativity. To remember that their words say more about them than they ever will about you. And if you don't, you're allowing them to dictate how you see yourself, and that's a power you should never hand over to anyone. I've learned to recognize these compliments for what they are: a mirror reflecting someone else's insecurities. And when you see it that way, it loses its sting. Instead of internalizing it, you can almost laugh it off, because at the end of the day, their words say more about them than they ever will about you. So, here's what I do now. When I receive a backhanded compliment, I don't let it slide. I'll respond with something like, "Thanks, but what do you mean by that?" or "I'm not sure I follow you. Can you explain that a little more?" It forces them to confront the insult hidden in their words. It puts them on the spot. They're suddenly aware that you're not playing their game, that you're not going to passively accept their negativity. And it's amazing how quickly their tune changes. They'll either backpedal and try to rephrase their compliment, or they'll reveal their true intentions. Either way, you've gained valuable information about their character. The takeaway: don't let anyone's veiled negativity define you. Whether it's a well-meaning friend, a jealous colleague, or even a family member, remember this: your worth isn't up for debate. Compliments should lift you up, not tear you down. If someone's words leave you questioning yourself, it's time to question their intentions instead. Life is too short to waste on people who can't genuinely celebrate your successes. Surround yourself with those who see your value and aren't afraid to let you know it, without any strings attached. You deserve to be around people who make you feel good about yourself, not those who constantly try to undermine your confidence. Sign number 2, they subtly exclude you from plans. It's the little things that sting the most, isn't it? Like realizing that your so-called friends accidentally forgot to invite you to that dinner, that party, or that weekend getaway. They'll swear it was an oversight, that it was a last-minute thing, or worse, they'll assume you were too busy anyway. But let's be real, these aren't accidents. This is social exclusion in its sneakiest form, and it's a clear sign that you're not as valued as you think. Think about the power dynamics at play in social groups. There's always a hierarchy, a pecking order. An exclusion is a way of reinforcing that hierarchy, of reminding you of your place in the group. It's a subtle way of saying, "You're not one of us." It's also a test. They're testing to see how much you'll tolerate being left out. Will you quietly accept the excuses? Will you try to force your way into their plans? Or will you simply fade away, accepting your exclusion as a sign that you don't belong? I've been on the receiving end of this too many times. I remember checking my phone one weekend and seeing pictures of a group of friends having a great time at an event I would have loved to attend. The kicker: not a single person mentioned it to me beforehand. When I casually brought it up later, they were full of excuses. "Oh, we thought you were busy. It was such a last-minute plan." But deep down, I knew the truth: if they wanted me there, they would have made sure I knew about it. It wasn't just about missing out on the fun. It was about the feeling of being an afterthought, of not being valued enough to be included. It was about realizing that I wasn't as important to them as I thought I was. Here's where the controversy comes in. This kind of exclusion isn't just thoughtlessness, it's deliberate. It's a way of sending a message without saying a word. They don't want you there, but they don't have the guts to tell you to your face. Instead, they hope you'll just fade out of the group quietly, without causing a scene. It's passive-aggressive and it's cowardly, but it's also incredibly common. People don't talk about this much because it's easier to pretend it's not happening. It's easier to swallow the excuses, to convince yourself that it really was just a mistake, rather than face the painful truth that you're being pushed out. But here's the thing: if you keep accepting those excuses, you're giving them permission to keep excluding you. You're letting them decide your place in their lives, rather than taking control of your own narrative. You're essentially sending the message that you're okay with being treated as an afterthought, that you don't deserve to be included. I had to learn this the hard way. For a while, I kept quiet, letting those accidental exclusions slide, hoping that maybe next time I'd be included. But then I realized that by staying silent, I was allowing myself to be treated as an afterthought. I was complicit in my own exclusion. So, I did something controversial: I started calling them out on it. I'd say, "Hey, I saw you guys went out last weekend. Why didn't anyone invite me?" It wasn't easy, and it definitely made things awkward. But it also forced them to confront their behavior. And guess what? The dynamics changed. Some people got defensive, others tried to make up for it. But the bottom line was clear: I wasn't going to let them exclude me without a fight. I was going to stand up for myself and demand to be treated with respect. Here's the deeper message: if people want you in their lives, they'll make the effort to include you, no matter how last-minute the plan is. They'll go out of their way to make sure you know about it, even if it means sending a quick text or making a phone call. And if they don't, then it's time to rethink the value of those relationships. You deserve to be around people who don't make you feel like you're constantly chasing after their approval or their attention. True friends don't forget to invite you. They make sure you're there because they genuinely enjoy your company. They value your presence and appreciate your contributions to the group. So, if you find yourself being subtly excluded from plans, don't just brush it off. Confront it. Ask the hard questions. Why wasn't I invited? Was there a reason I wasn't included? And be prepared for the answers, even if they're not what you want to hear. Because at the end of the day, it's better to know where you truly stand than to be left wondering why you were left out again. It's better to face the truth, even if it's painful, than to live in a fantasy of belonging. And remember, you're not a backup option. You're a priority. Surround yourself with people who treat you like one. Don't settle for being an afterthought, a second-class citizen in someone else's life. You deserve to be celebrated, appreciated, and included. Sign number 3, they're busy. Only when it comes to you. We've all heard it before: "I'm so busy these days. Sorry, I can't hang out." It's the perfect excuse, isn't it? After all, who isn't busy in today's fast-paced world? But what happens when you start noticing a pattern? They're always available for others, posting pictures of their outings, catching up with mutual friends. But when it comes to you, suddenly they're swamped. The truth? They're not too busy, they're just too busy for you. This is a harsh reality, but it's one we need to acknowledge. We live in a culture that glorifies busyness, that equates being busy with being important. But the truth is, people make time for what, and who, they care about. If they're constantly busy when it comes to you, it's not about their schedule, it's about their priorities. And that's a hard pill to swallow, because it forces you to confront the reality that you might not be as important to them as they are to you. It's easy to rationalize their behavior, to tell yourself that they really are just swamped, that they'll eventually have more time for you. But the pattern is the key. Are they consistently unavailable when you reach out? Are they always making excuses? Are they always prioritizing other people and activities over you? If so, it's time to accept the truth, they're not interested in investing in a relationship with you. I've been in that frustrating situation more times than I care to admit. I remember reaching out to a friend I used to be close with, trying to set up a time to catch up. Every time I suggested something, they'd have an excuse. I'm working late. I've got a lot on my plate. Maybe next week. Meanwhile, I'd see them hanging out with other people, having a great time. They somehow always found a way to make time for everyone, except me. It took me longer than I'd like to admit to see the pattern. The message they were sending was loud and clear: I wasn't a priority in their life anymore. It wasn't about the specific activities they were doing, it was about the consistent lack of effort to connect with me. It was about the feeling of being constantly pushed aside, of being treated as an afterthought. Here's where the controversy comes in. We've been conditioned to accept busy as a valid reason to be pushed aside. We're taught to be understanding, to be accommodating, to not be needy. But let's be honest, busy is often a polite way of saying, I don't want to spend time with you. It's easier for them to blame it on their schedule than to admit that they're choosing not to include you in their life. It's a passive-aggressive way of keeping you at arm's length without having to deal with the confrontation that would come with telling you the truth. They want to keep you on the hook, just in case, without actually investing in the relationship. They might enjoy the feeling of knowing that you're still interested in them, that you're still willing to put in the effort. But they're not willing to reciprocate. They're content to let you do all the work, while they reap the benefits of your attention without having to invest anything in return. I've been on both sides of this. There were times when I was the one making excuses, because I didn't know how to tell someone that I'd outgrown the friendship, that I no longer enjoyed their company. It's not easy to be honest about these things, especially when you care about the other person's feelings. But being on the receiving end taught me a valuable lesson: it's better to be honest, even if it's uncomfortable, than to string someone along with excuses. It's better to be upfront about your feelings than to leave someone hanging, wondering why you're always too busy for them. When I finally called out my friend on always being busy, the conversation was awkward, but it was necessary. It gave me the clarity I needed to move on and invest my time and energy in relationships where I was valued. It allowed me to free myself from the cycle of disappointment and rejection. Here's the deeper message: your time is precious, and so is your energy. Don't waste it on people who can't be bothered to make time for you. If someone is constantly too busy for you, it's time to reassess the relationship. You deserve to be around people who are excited to see you, who make an effort to include you in their lives, not just when it's convenient for them, but because they genuinely enjoy your company. It's important to recognize that people change, and so do relationships. Sometimes we hold on to people out of habit, nostalgia, or fear of being alone, even when they've clearly moved on. We cling to the past, hoping that things will go back to the way they were. But there's strength in letting go, in acknowledging that you deserve more than someone's leftover time. It's not about being needy or demanding, it's about valuing yourself enough to walk away from those who don't value you. It's about prioritizing your own well-being and investing in relationships that are truly fulfilling. Sign number 4, they avoid physical contact like the plague. Let's talk about the elephant in the room: physical contact, or rather, the lack of it. We're not just talking about romantic relationships here. Physical contact is a basic human interaction, a way of connecting, building trust, and expressing affection. So, what does it mean when someone goes out of their way to avoid even the most casual touch? The answer isn't pretty: they're sending a clear signal that they're uncomfortable around you, and it's time to pay attention. Think about the role of physical touch in our lives. From a young age, we're taught that physical touch is a sign of love, comfort, and support. We hug our family members, high-five our friends, and pat each other on the back. These small gestures help us to feel connected to others and to build strong relationships. But what happens when someone consistently avoids these gestures? What does it mean when they stiffen up when you try to hug them, when they recoil when you reach out to touch their arm, or when they simply avoid getting too close to you? It's a clear sign that they're not comfortable around you, that they don't feel a sense of connection or trust. I once had a colleague who seemed to recoil every time I reached out for a handshake or a friendly pat on the back. At first, I thought I was imagining things. Maybe they were just naturally reserved, or maybe they were having a bad day. But then I noticed it wasn't just me. They were warm and tactile with everyone else, hugging their friends, high-fiving their colleagues, and engaging in all sorts of casual physical touch. But when it came to me, it was like I had the plague. They'd stiffen up, take a step back, or find some way to avoid any physical contact. It wasn't long before I realized that their avoidance of physical contact was more than just a quirk. It was a deliberate effort to keep me at a distance. They didn't want to get too close, they didn't want to create a sense of intimacy, and they certainly didn't want to touch me. Here's the controversial part: physical contact is a natural part of human interaction, and when someone consistently avoids it, they're communicating a lack of comfort or connection. Sure, some people just aren't touchy-feely, and that's okay. Some people have personal boundaries that need to be respected, and that's perfectly valid. But when it's selective, when they're fine hugging others but stiffen up around you, it's a red flag that something's off. It's a sign that they don't like you, that they don't trust you, or that they simply don't want to be around you. They might not dislike you enough to say it outright, but their body language is doing all the talking. They're sending you a clear message, whether they realize it or not: I'm not comfortable with you. And let's be honest, we've all been there, on both sides of the equation. Maybe you've avoided a handshake or leaned back when someone got too close because you just weren't feeling the vibe. Maybe you've been on the receiving end, wondering why someone always seems to flinch when you're around. It's uncomfortable, it's awkward, and it's often a sign that the relationship isn't as strong as you'd like to think. It's a clear indication that there's an underlying issue that needs to be addressed. But here's the deeper truth: physical contact is a fundamental part of human connection. It's how we show trust, warmth, and empathy. When someone avoids it with you, they're not just avoiding touch, they're avoiding closeness, intimacy, and vulnerability. They're keeping you at arm's length, literally and figuratively. And that's a clear indication that there's an underlying issue in the relationship. It could be that they simply don't like you, or it could be that they have some other reason for keeping you at a distance. But whatever the reason, it's important to pay attention to the signs and to address the issue directly. I've learned to pay attention to these cues, even when it's hard to admit what they mean. There was a time when I ignored the signs, convincing myself that someone's reluctance to get close was just a personality trait. Maybe they were just shy, or maybe they had a difficult childhood. But the more I reflected on it, the more I realized that it was about me, and our relationship. They weren't just shy or reserved, they were actively avoiding me. They didn't want to touch me, they didn't want to get close to me, and they didn't want to build a connection with me. When I finally confronted the situation, it led to some tough conversations, and in some cases, the end of the relationship. But it also freed me from the frustration of wondering why things felt off. It allowed me to move on and invest my time and energy in relationships where I felt valued, appreciated, and comfortable. So, here's the deeper message: don't ignore the signs when someone avoids physical contact with you. It's more than just a preference, it's a statement about their level of comfort and connection with you. It's a clear indication that something's not right, and that you need to address the issue directly. If you notice this pattern, don't be afraid to confront it. It might lead to a deeper understanding, or it might reveal that the relationship isn't as solid as you thought. Either way, it's better to confront the truth than to live in denial. And remember, you deserve relationships where physical contact isn't something to be avoided, but something that happens naturally and comfortably. Whether it's a friendly hug, a handshake, or just sitting close without feeling awkward, these small gestures build trust and connection. If someone consistently avoids them, it's a sign that something's not right. Don't be afraid to ask the tough questions, and if necessary, make the tough decisions. Life's too short to be surrounded by people who keep you at a distance, literally and figuratively. You deserve to be around people who make you feel comfortable, connected, and valued. Sign number 5, they disappear when you need support. Let's get real, nothing reveals the true nature of a relationship like a crisis. When the going gets tough, you find out who your real friends are. The people who are there for you through thick and thin, who offer a listening ear, a helping hand, or a shoulder to cry on. But what does it say about someone when they vanish the moment you need them the most? It's not just a sign of flakiness, it's a neon warning that they're not as invested in you as you might have thought. It's a clear indication that they don't care about you as much as you care about them. And let's face it, when someone pulls a disappearing act during your darkest hours, it's not just hurtful, it's a betrayal. It's a violation of the implicit trust that exists in any meaningful relationship. Sign number 6, they disappear when you need support. Think about the foundation of any strong relationship, mutual support. It's about being there for each other through the ups and downs, the good times and the bad. It's about offering a helping hand when someone is struggling, providing a listening ear when they need to vent, and offering encouragement when they're feeling discouraged. But what happens when that support system crumbles? What happens when the people you thought you could rely on suddenly disappear when you need them the most? It's a devastating feeling, and it can leave you feeling alone, vulnerable, and betrayed. I learned this the hard way during a particularly rough patch in my life. I was dealing with a major personal issue, something that really shook me to my core. Naturally, I turned to the people I considered close friends, expecting some level of support, even if it was just a text or a quick call. But guess what? Crickets. The people I thought would be there for me suddenly had every excuse in the book. I'm so swamped at work. Sorry, I'm just really busy right now. I'll check in with you later. Spoiler alert, they never did. It wasn't just about the lack of practical help or emotional support. It was about the feeling of being abandoned, of being left to fend for myself during a time of crisis. It was about realizing that the people I had trusted and relied on were nowhere to be found when I needed them the most. Here's where it gets controversial. People love to talk about how they'll always be there for you, how you can count on them no matter what. But when push comes to shove, many of them are only around for the good times. They'll party with you, laugh with you, and enjoy the high points of your life. But the minute things get real, they're nowhere to be found. It's easier for them to ghost you than to deal with your pain or discomfort. They don't want to be dragged into your problems because deep down, they don't care enough to be there when it counts. They're more concerned with protecting their own comfort and happiness than with offering support to someone in need. And let's be brutally honest, true support isn't about convenience, it's about commitment. It's about being there when it's hard, when it's uncomfortable, and when it's the last thing you want to do. It's about putting someone else's needs before your own, even when it's inconvenient or challenging. The people who disappear when you need them most aren't just being inconsiderate, they're showing you exactly where you stand in their life. They're saying, without words, your problems aren't worth my time. They're prioritizing their own comfort and convenience over your well-being. I remember feeling absolutely gutted when I realized that the people I'd been there for in the past, during their breakups, their family dramas, their career setbacks, couldn't be bothered to return the favor. It was a wake-up call, and not a pleasant one. But it was also a lesson I needed to learn. Not everyone who smiles in your face is truly in your corner. Some people are only around when things are going well, when the sun is shining and the birds are singing. But when the storm clouds gather, they disappear without a trace. They're fair-weather friends, and they're not worth your time and energy. Here's the deeper message: support is the foundation of any meaningful relationship. It's easy to be around when everything's going well, but the real test of a relationship is how people respond when things fall apart. If someone disappears the moment you need them, they're not just failing you, they're showing you that they were never really there in the first place. But don't let their absence make you bitter. Don't let it harden your heart or make you cynical about relationships. Instead, let it make you better. Use it as a filter to sift out the people who don't deserve a place in your life. The ones who stick around, who check in, who show up even when it's inconvenient, those are the people who truly matter. Those are the relationships you should nurture and cherish. The people who are willing to weather the storms with you are the ones who are worth holding on to. In the end, life is too short to invest in fair-weather friends. Surround yourself with people who will stand by you in the storm, not just bask in the sunshine. Because when you find those rare individuals who stick around when the chips are down, you've found something worth holding on to. And as for those who disappear, let them go. They've already shown you their true colors. Don't waste your time and energy trying to win them back or change their behavior. Focus on the people who are already there for you, who value your friendship and offer unwavering support. Sign number 7, they gossip about you behind your back. Gossip. It's the social poison that spreads faster than wildfire and can burn down relationships in an instant. It's the insidious force that undermines trust, erodes reputations, and creates division within communities. The thing about gossip is that it's never as innocent as people make it out to be. It's often disguised as harmless chatter, a way of bonding with others or sharing information. But beneath the surface, it's a destructive force that can have devastating consequences. When someone you consider a friend talks behind your back, they're not just sharing a harmless story, they're actively sabotaging your trust, your reputation, and your relationship. They're betraying your confidence and undermining your credibility. And let's be real, when they gossip about you, it's a clear sign that they don't respect you, no matter how friendly they act to your face. They may smile and laugh with you in public, but behind your back, they're tearing you down and spreading rumors. I've been the subject of gossip before, and let me tell you, it's one of the most gut-wrenching experiences. It's a feeling of violation, of having your privacy invaded and your character assassinated. It can leave you feeling exposed, vulnerable, and deeply betrayed. There was a time when I confided in someone I thought was a close friend about a personal issue. I needed to vent, to unload some of the weight I was carrying. I trusted this person to keep it between us, to offer a listening ear and a supportive shoulder. But within days, details of that conversation started circulating, twisted and exaggerated. It was like a game of telephone, except the message wasn't just getting lost, it was being weaponized against me. The person I trusted had turned my vulnerability into entertainment for others. It was devastating. Not only was my privacy violated, but my words were twisted and used against me. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and deeply hurt. It was a painful reminder that not everyone can be trusted, even those who seem to be closest to you. Here's the controversial truth: people who gossip about you aren't just venting or sharing concerns, they're playing a power game. Gossip is a way for them to elevate themselves while putting you down, all without having to confront you directly. It's cowardly, manipulative, and toxic behavior. They're not just damaging your reputation, they're damaging the very foundation of trust that any real relationship is built on. They're creating a climate of suspicion and paranoia, making it difficult to build genuine connections with others. And let's get one thing straight: people who gossip about others to you will gossip about you to others. It's a pattern, not a one-time thing. It's a character trait, a fundamental flaw in their personality. I've seen it happen too many times to count. Someone who loves to spill the tea on everyone else suddenly goes quiet when they're around you. Guess what? They're probably spilling your tea when you're not around. They're collecting information about you, waiting for an opportunity to use it against you. It's a betrayal of the worst kind because it's done in the shadows, without giving you a chance to defend yourself or even know what's being said. You're being judged and ridiculed behind your back, without even knowing the charges against you. Now here's where it gets really personal. I remember confronting the friend who gossiped about me, expecting some sort of apology or at least an explanation. Instead, they acted like it was no big deal, brushing it off as just a bit of harmless talk. But here's the thing, gossip is never harmless. It's a betrayal, plain and simple, and it says far more about the person spreading it than it does about the person it's about. It reveals their insecurities, their lack of empathy, and their willingness to damage others for their own amusement. Their defensiveness and denial were a clear sign that they didn't take responsibility for their actions and that they didn't value our relationship. It was a painful realization, but it allowed me to move on and invest my time and energy in relationships where I felt respected, valued, and trusted. So, there you have it, 7 sneaky signs that someone dislikes you but is hiding it. From the seemingly harmless jokes to the backhanded compliments, from the subtle exclusions to the constant busyness, from the avoidance of physical contact to the disappearing act during times of need, and finally, the ultimate betrayal of gossip, these signs can reveal the true feelings that someone is trying to conceal. Remember, this isn't about becoming paranoid or assuming the worst in everyone. It's about developing a keen awareness of social dynamics and learning to trust your intuition. If something feels off, it probably is. Pay attention to the patterns of behavior, the unspoken cues, and the subtle shifts in body language and tone. And remember, context is key. A single instance of a particular behavior doesn't necessarily indicate a deep-seated dislike. It's the consistent pattern of behavior over time that reveals the truth. Are they consistently exhibiting several of these signs? Are their actions contradicting their words? These are the questions you need to ask yourself. If you recognize several of these signs in a relationship, it's time to take a step back and reassess the situation. Ask yourself, is this relationship truly serving my best interests? Am I being valued and respected? Am I investing my time and energy in a way that is mutually beneficial? If the answer is no, it's time to make some changes. It might mean setting boundaries, confronting the person directly, or even ending the relationship altogether. It's not easy, but it's necessary for your own well-being. Setting boundaries is about defining what you're willing to tolerate in a relationship and what you're not. It's about communicating your needs and expectations clearly and assertively. It's about standing up for yourself and refusing to be treated disrespectfully. Confronting the person directly can be a difficult but necessary step. It's about having an honest and open conversation about your concerns. It's about expressing your feelings in a calm and respectful manner and giving the other person an opportunity to explain their behavior. Ending the relationship might be the most difficult option, but it's sometimes the only way to protect yourself from further harm. It's about recognizing that some relationships are simply too toxic or unhealthy to continue. It's about prioritizing your own well-being and choosing to move on to something better. No matter what you choose to do, remember that you deserve to be surrounded by people who genuinely like and respect you. You deserve to be valued, appreciated, and supported. Don't settle for anything less. It's not always easy to walk away from relationships, especially those that have been a part of your life for a long time. You might feel guilty, afraid, or uncertain about the future. But remember that you're not alone. Many people have experienced the pain of realizing that someone doesn't like them, and they've found the strength to move on and build healthier, more fulfilling relationships. And remember, ending a toxic relationship doesn't mean you're a failure. It means you're brave enough to prioritize your own well-being and to create a better life for yourself. It means you're willing to let go of the past and embrace the possibilities of the future. So, take a deep breath, trust your intuition, and make the changes that are necessary to create a life filled with genuine connection, mutual respect, and unwavering support. You deserve it. And remember, the world is full of wonderful people who are waiting to connect with you on a deeper level. Don't be afraid to let go of the ones who are holding you back and embrace the ones who will lift you up. Ultimately, recognizing these signs is about empowering yourself to create healthier, more fulfilling relationships. It's about recognizing your own worth and refusing to settle for anything less than genuine connection and mutual respect. It's about taking control of your own narrative and surrounding yourself with people who truly value and appreciate you. So, go forth, be brave, and create a life filled with love, laughter, and genuine connection. You deserve it, and you are capable of achieving it. Don't let anyone hold you back from living your best life and building the relationships you deserve.